And I just want to note that I am Claudia Brochu, Chair. Roger Arnold, Vice Chair, is here. Mary Layton, Rob Gear, John Langus, and various members of the public, as well as Herb Durfee, our town manager, and Miranda Bergmeyer, his administrative assistant. Because this is the resumption, I'm not going to read the COVID stuff again. First item on our agenda is approval of the agenda. Any select board members have additions, reordering? Seeing none, we'll move on to public and select board comments. Roger, can you just do a very quick reminder if the public wants to speak, what they need to do?
With the upgrade of Zoom, you can go under reactions and there'll be raise hand. And so in Zoom, so if you're participating by Zoom, if you click on reactions, you'll be able to raise your hand. I will signal to Claudette that there's a public comment. And if you're participating by phone, it is *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute yourself once recognized. And people have done this already, so.
So are there any public comments?
So Demo has his hand up.
Hi,
before you speak, please, if you could state your name and locatable address.
Sure. Demo Sophonis, 82 Glen Ridge Road. And I just want to know if I should be speaking on this now or when it is actually on the agenda, because I believe public comment is on items that are not on the agenda. Is that correct?
That is typically correct.
So I submitted a couple of letters and I'm here to support the submission of those letters. So should I wait until you are on board with the budget discussion?
Yes, and just to let you know that your letters are not in this packet. They are in the Wednesday, January 13th packet.
But I thought I saw them in the revision, in the amended packet, the 11th. So then if they're not on there, if you don't have receipt of those letters, then I shouldn't be speaking about something you haven't received, correct?
No, you should be able to speak.
Yeah.
Okay. So then I can't, so if it's, then it's not on the agenda, so I can speak about it now.
Sure. Yes.
Okay. Just want to make sure that rules haven't changed at all. Okay. So I submitted 2 letters. The first one is a letter that is basically on 12/16/2020. I viewed the select board meeting and basically came away feeling a bit surprised and confused hearing that the board would even consider defunding any part of the community policing line item. And then I stated my case as to reasons why and answered questions to what I actually heard some of the comments made. And then it's rather lengthy, and I know I don't have a whole lot of time, so I probably should wait till you receive the letters. But the police, I just want to give you some history of the community policing in Norwich to support why I sent the letters. The Norwich Select Board formed a committee to write up a charge for a newly appointed committee to investigate the benefits of community policing in Norwich. That was in the year 2000 and 2001, I believe. They met for several months and decided that community policing was the way to go. A while later, the committee was officially formed. You have a copy of this report in the archives, and you'll also have it in your January 13th packet. The committee would be known as the Police Services Committee, and I was one of the members on it. It's made up of appointed officials and also community members. The committee met for several months, even visiting with other police departments and working out the details of how and what a community policing program should look like. The former police chief, Doug Robinson, was a sergeant at the time and became the police chief shortly thereafter and worked very closely with our committee to implement the proper guidelines. We finished our charge and we presented a police services report to the select board, which was formally accepted by the town manager at a select board meeting. At last week's meeting, I heard some comments as to why we shouldn't, why public money shouldn't be used to fund community policing. And so my letter states the reasons why I believe it should, based on the fact that it was the select board that authorized the police services committee to exist in the first place. And it was the select board that accepted the police services committee's report, okay? And I also have submitted since then, and I understand that is also in the packet for January 13th. And again, I apologize for the confusion, but it's one of your meetings got waylaid until tonight, and I thought my information was received, so forgive me for that. I'm no longer a public official, just a crossing guard, so you got to allow me some slack there. Pardon me, pardon my humor. Okay, so policing in Norwich, a progress report. That will be the second document that you'll receive, and it is the actual report that was submitted on February 11th, 2009 to the select board and accepted by your town manager at the time, okay? And in there, it states all the things that the police services committee feels should be done to bring about community policing and get away from what was known as policing before, which wasn't a whole lot of community policing. So in the report, they wanted you to do things like bike safety day, meeting with the children at the school, providing glow sticks on Halloween night, and all of that is in the report, right? Job shadow at Richmond School, filling in at times as a crossing guard so you could get out to the community more. Both formal and informal research was done about a lot of things. There's 4 parts to this report, which you'll see. Finishing up real quick. So what the conclusion was, and this is the very important part, we commend Chief Robinson for implementing.
Join the meeting.
In many cases, proactivity before our report was completed. The select board, by its nature as a legislative body, will change in composition from year to year. However, we hope it will continue to offer firm policy guidance, but resist the urge to play armchair quarterback. And to all parties, police, chief, select board, and town manager, we offer the following counsel. As the years pass and memories fade, be mindful of the lessons learned from this experience. And this experience lasted a good, probably 7 or 8 months, and took a lot of work from a lot of community members. There's a complete list, and the report itself is about maybe 100 pages thick. So be mindful of the lessons learned from this experience. Dust off the Norwich Police Services Committee report. Give it another read, and be committed to avoiding past mistakes. History would suggest that the town will need another police committee and another police report in 5 or 10 years' time, but it doesn't have to be that way. You get to break the cycle. Now, I did not read the entire contents of my first letter because that was verbatim to everything that was said at the meeting, and you'll get a chance to read that when you see it. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Dima.
No questions?
None that I can see.
Okay, anybody else?
Thanks, Timo.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Any other public comments, Roger?
I don't see any folks raising their hands.
Any select board comments? Seeing none. Um, Moving on to item 3. A discussion about adding articles to the town meeting warning. And unfortunately, our delay or our recess from last week has complicated this issue a little bit. So it's petition versus just having the select board add or discuss and add articles. So and there's some material in the packet that kind of goes against, I know the electronic signature was one part of this, and it sounds as though, from what I could see from Will Senig, we can kind of allow that. The legislature does not allow it, but it doesn't sound as though anybody would object if select boards allow them. But it brings, how do we want to go about adding articles is the bottom line. Any thoughts?
Mary has her hand up, but I think Claudette has previously said that board members can just signal to Claudette and raise your physical hand.
Go ahead, Mary.
I'm wondering if we can be flexible. So, I mean, it might be that, well, let's say we did not allow the, the electronic signatures. We might not want to automatically just put something on. We might want to consider it. But if we did allow for electronic signatures, it would at least give us a sense of how many citizens supported a certain action. So it would be useful information for us to make a decision. So should we leave it flexible?
John?
I think that that's smart. And I think we could also streamline it. Like personally, if it's an article that's been on for at least the last 2 years, right? In more or less the same form, then I think that we could probably agree to just let it be on there. And then new items that people were looking to add, we have some additional process for. I still like the electronic signatures, but I think it would still just be something that would inform us, like Mary's talking about. So I certainly agree with the spirit of her suggestion.
Bonnie has her hand up. I don't know if she would be providing information for us, but in either case, Bonnie has her hand up, Claudette.
Bonnie, go ahead.
Hi. Petitions, if you're going to have to make a decision because article petitions are due on Thursday and you're giving people less than 72 hours notice to obtain those signatures. And I would recommend at this point, because of time, that you consider accepting the petitions as a petition and consider it putting them on the ballot without signatures.
Yes.
I just don't think it's fair at this point. People are going to have to go out and strive to find at least 160 plus or 105 plus signatures in order to make it a binding article. And electronic or otherwise, physically, you just haven't. I just don't think that you've given people enough time to go out and garner those signatures either way.
Okay, thank you, Bonnie.
Herb, can you just can you just let us know what you've been telling people? I feel like I feel like I think we might have conflicting. I think we may or may not have reached a decision in the past, and I want to know what you have been telling other folks who have like called in, because I want to do whatever that is.
Everything, my last understanding when you initially talked about, when I brought the Vermont Nurses Association before you, was that my understanding at the end of the night was that you didn't make any changes to your policy, so it stood. So,
Okay.
So in the absence of changing that or making decision, your existing policy stands in place. The good thing is that everyone that I generally deal with has just put in a level fund budget, so it's a moot point. But the Vermont Nurses Association is about I can't remember, it's an 18 or a 20% increase. It's their first increase in a long time. And then I just learned this past Friday that the Lions Club fireworks is going to increase from 3,000 to 3,500. Other than that, unless there are any new articles or new petitions that are coming in, I'm not aware of any new ones, but Bonnie seems to think there may be a couple floating out there that have a financial thing, but I haven't spoken to anybody about that, any of those that may come in. So anything I've dealt with, it's either level fund or VNA and fireworks that have gone up a little bit.
Okay, well.
Rob?
Yeah, this is troublesome, but have we determined that we are leaving the town meeting day at the normal date? My understanding is that we have the power to change that date if it were felt that it was necessary. I'm not saying it is, but I'm not sure if we've said it officially.
We have not. We haven't even contemplated shifting to another day. I don't know. I guess it's in my mind, it's things are not expected to be better COVID wise
For a long time.
for a long time.
Yeah.
And so at what point do you just say, this is the date, let's just do it, and deal with the voting issue separately? I understand the legislature, I believe, as of last week, was setting aside a significant amount of money for,
Postage.
was it postage or was it envelopes?
Oh, that's a good point.
They said envelopes specifically, yeah.
That's true.
But
Yes,
are they
I-
postage paid envelopes? We don't
I
know.
think they're not.
I don't know.
Hope so.
Bonnie has her hand up. Maybe are they postage page envelopes, Bonnie?
No, they're not postage paid envelopes. They are envelopes. However, at a meeting today, we were led to believe that we might be able to recover some of the costs for the postage. Now, I haven't recovered any costs for the postage as of yet for August or November. And quite frankly, I placed an order for envelopes, which I still haven't received. So it's not 100% they'll pay for the postage. There are some things that, yes, the CARES Act will provide us with, but I need to have a little deeper discussion about that with them. The other part of this, too, which I'll find out more about tomorrow, is the Dresden ballot and how we're going to deal with the Dresden ballot. So for me, it's more than just town meeting. And just so Rob knows, I've been operating under the belief that it is going to be held on March 2nd. And those are the deadlines that I've been using when I communicate with people. If you were going to change the date, I would have hoped it would have been a little bit earlier in the game rather than at this point in time. but I still have to figure out what is going to happen with Dresden as well. And do I have to keep Dresden ballots separate postage-wise from Norwich ballots postage-wise? Because the money is only set aside for Vermont and not New Hampshire.
Crazy.
Oh, this is getting so complicated. But I guess to get to one, it seems like it is way too late now to even consider changing the date. Is that, are
I
we
agree. We should
all in
not change
agreement
the
with
date.
that?
Yeah, no, change the date.
Yeah, I agree.
Sounds good. Yeah.
Roger?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so
We
we
want a
are not
motion.
changing the date.
Now, I have to hop back to the article petitions for a moment. You've taken care of the people who have had, you know, the social services and the other
Yeah.
articles, but you still haven't considered what is the answer for the outlier petitions that could be out there.
Yeah, that's, I know we still need to, and again, it just,
I just want to make sure that you bring yourselves back to that, please, so that I have a solid answer to give people.
yeah, and I guess we have the article, the town meeting warrant and articles on our Wednesday agenda. There's a draft that's out there. I don't believe that all proposed articles are on that draft.
Well, they can't. Yeah, we still have to wait until Thursday till petitions are actually due in the office.
Yeah. And I think putting something, like you said, 72 hours, I think is insufficient time to even collect electronic signatures, to put something out for the general public to know about and to gather electronic signatures. Who's going to verify the signatures? Who's going to tally the signature? It's the process around all of that, to me, is just not doable in 72 hours.
Well, as far as verifying the signatures, the only verification I would be able to do at that point would be, in fact, whether they are or not a registered voter and a voter of this town. That is the only verification that it would allow me to do. And several petitions that I've received over the years, I've had people sign them who aren't registered, nor are they Norwich residents.
Right.
So, you know, people don't think to make sure that somebody's a registered voter before they ask them to sign the petition.
Yeah. I'm looking for some, John, go ahead.
So I would make a proposal, actually, if we want to do a motion, but you know, it sounds like no one's talked to Herb. I don't know, Bonnie, if anyone's talked to you about a new article. I personally don't think that it requires any more process if it's an increase in amount from a previous amount. If it's something that people have consistently supported in the past, people can, you know, look and see if it increased from the year before. We usually have a blurb on these. So I'd be fully in support of taking any previous one that's been on the ballot without any additional signatures or anything. I still think that it makes sense to have some sort of hurdle for anything new, because you could easily see a bunch of stuff coming in between now and 72 hours from now. If you say that,
well, yes,
everybody who wants a funding article can put it on the ballot with no holds barred, right? And we know from history that almost every single thing that goes on that list will be approved.
So what about, okay, so I think Bonnie might be getting at like an advisory article, like to put it in context with past examples. Like, you know, we also had like fair and impartial policing last year, an enhanced fair and impartial policing policy that had its signatures. And then we received that petition. So I think like, you know, like I think we have a process in place for, yeah, these financial articles. And I think it's smart to be flexible on that. But, you know, when we have, but about an advisory article, you know, how do we want to treat that?
I would have no problem with that. I would have no problem with taking an advisory article that's not committing funding.
Well, from what I understand, one of them could possibly be advisory, but there is the possibility that there might be 2 monetary articles out there. I don't know that for a fact. I guess what I'm trying to get at is because of COVID and people not supposed to be close to each other, and because it is such late notice, I wholeheartedly appreciate what you're saying, John. That's a tremendous fear of mine as well. But there has to be, you have to have, if I hand you 3 petitions or email you 3 petitions, or 4 or 5, however it shakes out, on Thursday night, you're going to have a process of accepting or denying for this year, understanding that this would be the only year at this point in time until there's a legislative change to accept a petition for what it is, an article, and the board would have to decide as a board whether or not you thought it was, whether or not it should be on the warning.
I have a question. It's
Yeah,
okay.
Mary.
Just
Yes.
on the timing. So the petitions are due on Thursday, but what's the sort of firm date by which we need to approve them?
The petitions are due in on Thursday. That is correct. Without having a calendar in front of me to tell you when the warning has to go up and be posted and be done, I, for some reason, somewhere around the 20th is sticking in my mind that we have to have a signed warning. All along, you have had the ability to deny a petition.
Right.
This would just be, due to COVID restrictions.
I think it would be, if we do get some, I do think it would be fair both for us to be able to review them, but also to be able to deny them. The question is, how would we do that? Would we have to have a short special meeting or something to do that?
Well, you might want to have a meeting at least to hear the authors of the petition and why they feel it's important for it to be on this year's ballot.
Right.
Whether before you decide whether to put it on or not.
Right. I think it's important to hear what is being proposed, and also for us to decide whether we would approve it. It's unusual because of this year and the COVID, and it's terrible conditions for people to get signatures, whether it's electronic or not. It's hard for people that have an idea for something they want on the ballot, but I don't feel comfortable about saying, no, we're not having any. And I don't feel comfortable about not reviewing them and making some kind of judgment about whether they should be on there.
I think that is a fairly fair process, Mary. If you had a chance to speak to the authors of the petition, and then deem its value after you've had the discussion with them, and then you as a board, maybe it's something that can wait until next year. I don't know,
Right.
because I don't know what these petitions are going to read. There's a lot of things to consider this year.
But we probably need a special meeting, I think, to consider them.
I
I would suggest that.
I would like to call the question. Is that the phrasing, right? Like, I think we should, should I make a motion? Like, I think we
Go
should.
ahead.
Okay, great. All right, look what I did. So I move that for the year 2021, the Norwich Select Board waives petitions on advisory and monetary articles from the public. How does that sound?
I don't know what it means. I'm not sure what your motion means.
I think he's trying to avoid people having to go out and get signatures, Mary, just for this year. That a petition can be presented without the required signatures.
But it does not include any kind of review process by us.
So I have a motion.
Yeah.
I have a motion. We don't have to, I need a second, right?
Right. I was just going to say, is there a second to that motion?
Can you repeat it?
Sure. I move that for the year 2021, the Norwich Select Board waives the required signature on monetary and advisory articles from the public.
Can I make a friendly amendment?
Sure.
Not until it's been seconded.
Is there a second?
You mind if I give it a shot, Roger? A different one?
So I'm going to take away, or whatever the word is, retract my motion.
Motion fails, in other words.
Motion fails.
Fails, and try a new one.
No second.
Or
Okay.
do you want to try an alternative, Claudette, since you were going to amend it?
The same language that Roger said for the start of the motion, which is, I move that we, for the year 2021, that any articles to the
Waive
town
required
warning
signatures, right?
not require signature, but that the select board will review the articles. No, not review.
Review and approve.
We'll hold a meeting next Monday to review, to have the petitioners present to the select board for the select board to approve or deny the article. That was a convoluted motion. Is there a second?
Second, it's ratty, but I'll second it.
Any discussion? John?
So does no one else see any validity in my proposal that if it's been on there before, we shouldn't have to have a lot of process around it?
Yeah, that's why I didn't second it. We should probably add that language to it as well.
So, I mean, no offense to everybody on this call. I would really, really, really not like to see you guys again next Monday.
I
I've
hear you.
way meetinged out over the last month and a half. So if we don't get a new article, I don't want to have to sit and talk about it. I'd just like to let it be on there again, like it has been for maybe
No,
the
I'm
last
not,
15
John,
years.
I'm not talking about the social services petition or articles. I'm
I'm
talking
talking
about,
about monetary articles that we see every year and get approved every year.
I'm talking about citizen raised articles that may ask us to consider a town vote on the Beaver Meadow sidewalk.
Right.
Right. So again, like so the advisory things that aren't monetary, like I really don't care about letting those on because they're not binding at all. They just are checking people's temperature on stuff. Why would we have to have a process for that this year?
I don't know. I lean more towards Claudette's motion. I know it's a lot of meetings, but I want to know what's going on. If we do get articles, we might not get any.
Any other select board comments? So if not, then
I think we should just vote. Yeah.
I was gonna call,
Yeah.
ask for a vote. Roger,
No.
Mary,
Yes.
Rob,
Yes.
John,
No.
and I'm a yes. Because I think we should have the petitioners just present briefly and we, as a board, vote yay or nay.
Great. Bonnie, I don't know if your hand is up again or if it's a holdover. I apologize.
It's okay. I think it's a holdover.
Okay.
So apologies, but we will have a brief meeting on Monday for just this discussion. 6:30, the regular time work.
Sure.
Do
So
you need me there, Madam Chair, since it's a holiday?
No, well, no.
I don't mind being there, but I'm just pointing that out.
So may I have a process point? So so I thought may I, Claudette? Sorry.
Yes, sorry.
Okay. So I actually thought that this was about like I thought this was about like the regional energy coordinator and and I thought this was relating to the two proposals we have from the energy committee, and that we would be spending our time deciding if we needed to put these on the ballot. But I guess that wasn't this agenda item. This was something else.
That wasn't this, that's a Wednesday agenda item.
Okay.
Because they have, I mean, that's,
Okay, great. Sorry.
and again, some part of the whole delay from not meeting on the 6th was we would have probably had other, we may have heard other articles, but we had not determined really quite what the process was going to be for how we add citizen articles. So we needed to fix that.
Okay.
So, all right. Moving on then to the budget. And I don't know if anybody has any great thought in how to go about talking about the budget other than what we did last week. I'm looking for guidance here from board members on how they want to proceed going through this budget.
I mean, I'm happy. I have an idea that I'm happy to share.
Please do.
So, as I wrote that memo, and I know it's a part of the amended packet for the 13th, but I had like sort of my approach was to, I thought that we were at 12% or 11.5 was reflective of a general consensus, but because of the unique circumstances and some of your own taking points, Claudette, I dove back in and looked at some of the bigger, what I thought are like bigger picture items, and made those proposals. So thinking about a bridge, thinking about the engine 2, thinking about Tracy Hall, thinking about some of these like bigger things that have like designated fund implications, just doing the unattractive work of making, I'll say a political decision, since budgets are political and moral documents, doing that political choosing of what can be deferred. And so I did that. And I don't know, I think that's a high level place to begin. I don't know if others are thinking of high level items since we've recessed, or if it's better to chip away, line by line. So I throw that out there. Like, I think people should maybe weigh in on some like bigger items, and then maybe do the hard work of, not the hard work, but do the work of making some decisions. And so that's what I did in my memo. And that's what I think might be helpful as a process.
So I have a question of the increase.
Mary,
is that a particular, I'm sorry.
you're getting wonky.
I'm getting
connection.
wonky. Okay. How is it now?
Good.
A little better. I'm just wondering where the 11% increase, was that a particular board member's strategy?
Well,
At one point, it was like, when I went through it for the first time, it was 17, which seems high. But where are we coming up with the 11?
So I was looking, so from our collective work at the end, I think the latest document that Herb had sent out, I think Rob was at 11.6. I think I was at 11.5. I think John was around like 8.5, but he had already factored in some undesignated fund spending. Claudette revised at 1.9, and then you were at 17, right? So like,
Yeah.
so I'm
That's
saying,
where it came
to
out.
me,
Okay.
to me, like consensus is that like 11.5 number, and then we could like just, so what we could do is say consensus is 11.5. Let's think about the undesignated fund, what we want to match with that, or we could, take Claudette, since she made bigger cuts, like take that on and like make some additional big picture cuts, which is what I did.
Right.
That's what I got.
And also, I think that initially some of Claudette's cuts were made with idea of perhaps making it up with the undesignated fund, if I am right. Is that right, Claudette?
Yes.
In our initial,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
in my second go around, what I did was take some of John and Roger's averaging, to make some very minor cuts. And then I proposed 25,000 from the undesignated fund for the IT upgrade instead of funding the full 50 this year, or 58, or however much it was. But I also, there are some other capital budget things that I think are just not necessary this year, like a 72-inch mower. Some of the stuff that you pointed out, Mary, the transfer station, sheds, and so, I'm looking at the finance committee's recommendation for 3 to 4%. We already know what the potential impact of the school is going to be. I think 10% is just outrageously high. John?
I'm curious whether Herb has any suggestion he wants to throw out, if there's any sort of attempt that you've made to reconcile these, the 5 board members' positions with the position that you have, plus your department heads.
So basically, a lot of that I tried to do with regard to the down in the Department of Public Works, when we talked about the grants versus it was mostly related to bridge related stuff. There's a lot of grant funding that we agreed to get it down to 0. But in order to do that, you've got to have the designated fund for bridges at 175,000. Unless the only thing that you could do there to make it less than 175,000 is to delay the Chapel Hill Road project, because you're locked in basically with the Tiger Town and the Route 132 bridge projects. So that's a function of why that bridge project has that designated fund. So that's one. The other piece of that is that if indeed you do, there are some things that potentially you could move out, whether that's a fire truck or another piece of equipment from that standpoint that would affect the function of how much designated fund that you would need. As a, for instance, I need a new generator for Tracy Hall. However, if you're going to do something with Tracy Hall, it would make sense to factor that into, say, any bond vote or something that you did where you wouldn't need the Tracy Hall stuff. And then the other piece of that is, as much as I don't really want to say it, but if you're looking operationally for some cuts, I would target the laborer position in the DPW, because right now that's not a hired position. That represents in total about $60,000. So if you're looking for funding to cut, as much as I don't want to do that, that's sort of a no harm, no foul situation. In other words, you're not affecting existing employees from that standpoint. What you will get as a result of that, though, is basically the continuation of an existing Department of Public Works that's effectively understaffed for the level of work that this town expects to get done. But again, that would be in a COVID-related year, as a for instance, that's probably like one of those doable things that we can all bite our tongue on. So those would be sort of those are a couple of the major things. I've already factored in, as you can see on the spreadsheet, the CPI and how that it didn't bring it down a lot, but it did bring it down some now that we have the actual CPI to use, which is the inflation rate related to the union contract. And then what the only other thing is looking at, I just throw the caution out with regard to the designated fund. There is some there to use, but if you want to hold on your reserve, you don't want to go too much into that. So there isn't a lot of dive into that particular fund to deal with. But as a, for instance, what Claudette recommended, and I missed writing up one of the articles, which is related to the to what she had just talked about, which was the IT, but she's suggesting articles related to IT and to the cruiser fund for the police on two different issues. That would take a little chunk out of at least what was recommended, or would follow suit with what Claudette is proposing, and would use an appropriate amount of undesignated fund balance without too much. With that, I would just basically say we're trying to work with you through the discussion as to where you want to be.
If we go the Roger route, I think if you have the undesignated fund, 70,000, the other cuts are maybe 67 too, so it's 137,200. But that doesn't bring an 11% budget down by a whole lot, right? What's it bring it down to, 9?
Yeah, my goal, my thinking, my hope was a single digit.
A single digit. It's
Yep.
really hard, because with everything that's happened this year, in any year, a 9% increase would be a lot. And, we've had the smaller increases in other years. Let's say that our annual thought about increases might be between 2 and 4, but then to swallow a 9% increase in any year is going to be a lot. So on top of everything else that's happened this year, psychologically, it's intimidating, but I don't think we should stop funding things. We're going to get through this COVID thing. We're going to get back to a better economy, and we don't want to hollow things out too much by not spending. So I'm kind of on the fence. I mean, I think if we got it into single digit, I would probably support it. I don't like it. I don't like what it will do for the taxpayers, but I think I would probably support going in the direction that Roger says, except I'm wondering about the effect of the 2 police cruisers when I'm not sure that they are functional. I just think I'm not confident that if you had 2 police cruisers, that they would be of good enough condition to provide the coverage. So I might want to maybe hear more about that, or just hear what other people think about that.
So Claudette, I don't know if this makes sense. So does it help to go through spoiler, I consulted with her about my recommendation. So you should, we hopefully were what he said, recommend, reanimates each other a little bit, right? So I'm wondering if it makes sense to, by consensus say, how do we all feel about not funding the general labor position, and going through, it doesn't have to be my memo per se, but it should it would be good to, I think it would be good to get on the same page about some of these bigger things.
Discuss those items.
And
I think
just
that would be smart.
Kind of just say yay or nay. How do we all feel? How do we all feel about the general labor? How do we feel about deferring, engine 2 or whatever, Claudette identifies as, you know, I don't know. You get the spirit of what I'm saying.
I do, and I'm wondering, I think we can probably come to some very quick agreement on some of the items that were yellow. And because some of those were just plain old averaging of the past 5 years that you and John had done. And as we do that, we will come across the bigger ticket items that Herb. So, and Herb has offered to share his screen and you're muted.
Oh, sorry. If you, just looking at Roger's column, if you took out the laborer position, he would be at 10.1%. So, and then Roger, if we further took some of that out from the IT related under general administration, most likely you would be under the 10% just with those two considerations. And I'm not trying to pick on Roger, but I'm just saying if it's to get it down to a single digit, that you're almost there just by taking the laborer out with his column.
I think that's an easy one. It's not easy for Larry, but I think it would be for 1 year, you know, a sacrifice that could be made personally. And also I think sweeping through these larger amounts, we're going to get less bogged down than if we look at the entire thing and start looking at every single detail.
Any other board thoughts? So we've got two. So a general, let's start someplace. Are we in agreement that the general laborer is going to be deferred this year?
Yes,
Yes.
I am.
So,
Yeah.
sorry, Larry, the general laborer will not be funded this year.
So what does that make that line item? Because mine didn't have it, and my number is slightly different than yours, Claudette. So the line we're talking about is line 402.
Go to Claudette's column in that line item.
Yeah, I think the math is wrong in Claudette's column. The problem is that a lot of these have hard numbers put into them instead of.
In Roger's memo is 39,318.
That was the
Oh, well, no, maybe mine's wrong because maybe my starting number. Oh, because my starting number was the department head number. Claudette's starting number was Herb's number. So they're very close though, my number and Claudette's number.
Claudette's column right now is without the laborer. So the number that's in there.
So was mine.
So what?
So is mine. That's what I'm asking.
Yeah.
Okay.
But mine is exactly what's been calculated with regard to the CPI, looking at all the compensation with regard to that position. That is so the salary is taken out of the road crew wages for the general laborer under Claudette's column, as is FICA, Medicare, and then all the benefits as you go down through. It's about 60 grand.
Okay, I'm with
60
you.
grand. Okay. So could you go through the, what order are we going to do this in? Roger memo or IT as Herb has suggested?
I suggest big picture items as Claudette, to Claudette's discretion.
So, sorry, point of clarification there.
Yeah.
If we're doing that, then what are you planning to do with all the small ones then? Whose column is going to be?
Well,
is that just going to be? We're talking at least about just following Roger's suggestions for all the small items that we don't specifically discuss. Is that the idea?
Well, no, I think we should take on these like bigger. I think we need to get through. I think we should take on the bigger like items because I think they are value-based, like moral, political. These are like the harder questions. And then I think we should circle back to these yellow things, which as we point out are mostly average issues, like whatever time we have left at the end of the night, right? Like I want to like do the harder thing first. Do you know?
Okay. Yeah. No, I'm definitely on board with that.
but like that goes, that I don't know if Claudette was sort of saying something different. She said like, we'll hit them as we go, which is also fine with me.
No, I'd rather not. Let's do the big ones first.
Okay, can we at least do that methodically, starting at the top?
Yes. Oh, okay.
So my problem is I can't see the spreadsheet and do Zoom at the same time.
Would you
If
like
Herb
one of
shares
us
it.
to share a screen so that it shows up on your screen?
Yes.
Although personally, I hate that because then it's super small and I can never read it. But
Yeah. So, but I'm fine with this view, but I just need somebody to tell me what's the next item. What the item is.
you want to lead us through this, Roger?
Yeah, that works for me.
I mean, yeah. Do you want me to share my screen or do you want me to like use my memo?
Well, why don't we start with your memo?
Yeah,
And
let's
then we
start
can
with the
start
memo.
with my memo, and then we can go with my memo.
Great. Okay. I just don't really want to, I don't want to over influence the conversation, like, because, you know, I don't want it to become known as the Roger memo that like, you know, brought all the taxes up. Okay. So let me look to share that. Okay.
It might bring the taxes down, Roger.
Thanks, Mary.
Yeah.
And we might also want to pay, refer back to the finance.
Yes. Okay, so I'm sharing my screen or I'm reading my memo to the group. Okay, that's what I'm doing. So I had delay the funding of the general labor position. Great, we all agreed that was, and Herb has already done the math. Then I proposed delay funding to engine 2 in the fire department. I said delay the purchase of engine 2 to fiscal year 24 and fund the apparatus fund at 20,000. I previously suggested a $50,000 allocation. So I think we may or may not, you know, so I don't, yeah, that's what's next. The engine 2, I said we should defer, you know, if we assume that like we're going to make a later purchase, we don't put as much money away, we don't squirrel as much money away and have a savings for this year. That was the logic behind my second suggestion.
So what is the savings there? Because I'm not looking at the spreadsheet either at this point. So
Herb,
fund apparatus fund at 20,000. But what would it be if that's after making the cut, right?
We need to please at least say the line item we're talking about.
sure,
Yep.
let me look. Let me.
Because we're just jumping around the document. No one's going to know what we're looking at.
All right. Let me do my Excel thing here. Okay, so the problem is that the information is always, of course, in multiple documents. So I think, and so maybe Herb has a quicker, like, you know, high level point for us. But I said fund the apparatus designated fund, which is at line item. I can't search here.
Line 360 and 361.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So we have at 360 and 361, the numbers that we have are, it was suggested, Herb suggested 30,000, the department head suggested 30. I have had 50, Rob had 50, John and Mary was at 60, John said 70, Claudette said 15.
Oh,
So-
we're all over the place.
We're all over the place. And so I'm saying, so I'm saying that we fund it. My proposal was 20,000 this year rather than 50 or 70 or 60.
And last year's budget is 15,000 and 0.
So again,
I'm fine with 20,000.
Yeah, so that's that line item. So again, not overjoyed by having to do that, but that is my that's a contribution, and we'll have some savings. So the chief has his hand up, Claudette, Chief
So,
Norwood.
sorry, you're saying 20,000 for the top one. What's this? What's the one beneath it for equipment that you're suggesting? You're suggesting 50.
I didn't have a suggestion for equipment. I was looking only at the app. I believe, Herb can correct me if I'm wrong, that the fire engine it comes out of the apparatus. The contributions for that purchase will come out of the apparatus fund, right?
Yes.
Right. And so I'm saying just defer the purchase of that.
No, they're two different funds. There's a funding line for the equipment line and the funding line for the apparatus.
And I'm not talking about the equipment line. I'm talking about a fire truck, which is from the apparatus line item.
Yeah, I hear you.
Okay.
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 So what was the chief?
Sorry, I'm trying to find the line item. Chief, go ahead.
So, thank you. So Roger, I'm just curious where you derive the $20,000 figure from.
Me too. So I think the conversation now might be, if we defer it to fiscal year 24, what kind of allocation, do we have to make to like be committed to that, to truly delay that purchase to another, right? Because if we look under the capital budget, I think it was for the first cycle, as Herb calls it, for capital budget, but I'm saying defer it to that second cycle. So like, I just want to I want a lower number to defer expenses for this year while also deferring the purchase of that truck. So I think what I should have said for this conversation is, I think there'll be considerable savings if we defer the purchase of this big ticket item. Like what is the number that makes sense?
Well, I'm not understanding why you want to defer the purchase of the fire truck.
Because I don't want to have a budget increase 12.5 or 11.5% this year. I'm just making a decision on something that needs to be deferred.
Okay, but the money is there to pay for the truck. So I'm not sure. Explain to me how deferring it for 2 years is going to benefit the budget.
I'm not
we're sort of mixing two decisions in one here.
Because to me, these are discrete decisions, right? One is the purchase of the fire apparatus, and the other is the funding of the designated fund. So those are two different things. I'm not sure why they're being brought together here.
Because one is a funding source for the other, is it not?
No, the money for the fire truck is there now.
Claudette, can I step in between, please?
Yes,
So
please.
So the bottom line is that it was recommended that they're trying to pay for the entire piece of apparatus through the existing designated fund. There still are some new designated funds that the fire department is requesting. I understand what Alex's question is, but I think the root of the matter at this point, Chief, is that the board is trying to make some difficult decisions. They're basically indicating that the purchase of that apparatus can be put out an additional year for the amount of money that would be raised for this singular year. To push that out, you could in essence have that number. In other words, do half this year, half next year, and still get the same amount. So that's essentially, again, they're just trying to get at a political decision-making process.
John?
So I have to come down on Alex's understanding here. I think he's right. The decision of what we spend that fund on, right, is different. All we're talking about right now, and it's going to be really bad if we keep getting bogged down for each item like this. All we're talking about right now is how much additional funding are we going to put into that particular pool of long-term spending? In this case, the apparatus fund. A different decision will be made on a different day as to whether we allow Herb and Alex to withdraw from that fund to buy that piece of apparatus this year, next year, the year after. Totally different decision. Question is that this pool of money that goes to several things, first in line is this truck, but many things, at what rate do we want to replenish it? I continue to hold the view that we asked the fire department 2 years in a row to take a hit on their long-term capital spending funding in order to help us keep the budget under control in 2 hard years. They agreed to do that. I was basically going to fund the requests. I would certainly not want to fund it at less than Herb's numbers of 30,000 for apparatus, 10 for equipment personally.
And I just want to respond, like, I totally hear what you're saying, but I think, like, in order, you have to sort of know what's coming down you have to know the uses of that fund. Don't you think like, that's a little bit disingenuous of an argument? Like, I know intellectually how that works. Like, I'm not saying, like, if the money is not, like, we're funding that fund for the purchase of these things. And so you're implicitly making a judgment about the things when you decide to make a judgment about what to fund the fund, right? Like, I don't know why you're splitting. I know what you're saying intellectually. I get it. But, like, do you also know what I'm saying?
Yes, but with all due respect, I think you're wrong, because there's lots of things that get funded from this fund. So if you underfund it, it may be that Alex and Herb talk and they come back and they say, okay, given that you didn't fund this to the extent that we thought you were going to, we want to reprioritize what's coming down this funding path, right? So that will be a discussion to be had based on the level of funding they have available to them. But I still think it is a distinct conversation. But you're on the record as saying you don't think we need to buy the engine this year. I think that's all you need to be on the record for, because we're not actually deciding that right here.
Yeah, but I'm looking at the list of capital projects that are their funding sources. Like, that's what I'm looking at. I don't know, maybe.
Mary or Rob, do you have any comment? Mary?
I haven't sorted out of my mind, which, I assume that if the money for engine 4 replacement is there, it will be replaced, which it probably needs to be replaced, because I think, I do trust that the fire department looks into this. But then if we draw down on the designated fund, we could do that. It may mean that due to needs that arise, that we might need to borrow in order to meet those needs. So to me, it's a trade-off between trying to save ahead and possibly needing to borrow. We might want to sort of take that risk of having to borrow. You might want to do that, but that's kind of how I see it playing out.
Rob?
I had just worked off of averaging what previous was spent and what the other select board members came up with, and that looked like 20,000. The sense, John's explanation of why it should be 30 makes a certain amount of sense, but I think given the reality of trying to keep the growth of the tax rate, 20 might be what we're going to have to come up with.
The chief has his Zoom hand up, Claudette.
Yeah, I just also want to hasten to add that, it's a year and a half before the end, provided that it's the water's placed. It's a year and a half out. So, we wouldn't be paying for that for a year and a half. So to now say we're going to put it off a year, that means actually, in effect, it's going to be 2.5 years.
Alex,
before we're able to.
we're not talking about whether or not you purchase. We're talking about how much to put in the designated fund. So,
Oh, because I thought we were talking about both.
Yeah, I think we went past that.
We were talking about both, right? Roger
I'm
mentioned
bringing us
the
back
engine,
to-
Andy mentioned the designated fund.
I am bringing us back to if we cut. Roger, how much were you proposing for funding that designated fund this year?
The NPD request in the justifications for fiscal year 21 for is $60,000. I'm suggesting that we do $20,000, which is down $10,000 from the town manager's recommendation of $30,000.
Okay.
And this was just a decision that I looking at the capital expense sheet. It looked like something that could wait. Although I don't love making this decision.
Right. And so Mary, are you okay with 20,000, funding it at 20,000?
I guess this year, yes. I don't
Rob?
like,
Yep.
John?
Sorry, no.
okay.
What's your funding proposal?
I said mine would be no lower than Herb's 30 and 10, but I don't think we need to do that every time. If we just do a vote, and then whatever the vote is, that should be our line item and keep trucking. I don't feel the need to offer a dissenting view on anything.
Okay. So, so then I also vote the 40, I mean the 20,000. So we're going to go to 20,000 on the fire department apparatus designated fund.
And so just to be clear, we're not talking about the fire engine now, right?
The fire,
We're not talking about your purchase of the fire engine.
Okay, I just want to make clear because that's
Okay.
what the conversation started out as.
but
Okay.
it informed, like that item informs the judgment for the amount. That was the context of it. That's all.
Okay,
I don't care what you, yeah. Anyway, okay. Woo. All right. So the next thing I'm gonna do what I hope. I'm gonna jump to the one next. I'm gonna jump to the other one if that's okay, Claudette, because it's easy. I think this is easier. So I said to defer the funding of everything Tracy Hall. So in other words, the $20,000 designated fund appropriation, don't fund that. Don't purchase a generator for that project, and don't make maintenance repairs. People want line items, is that right? So let me show the line items. But so I'm saying $20,000 Tracy Hall.
So
Okay.
does that, I could see the designated fund. I'm worried about the generator because they're ratty. Does that leave us with an emergency situation and no generator at Tracy Hall?
Well, that's kind of the life we've been living for the past few years.
Well, it's like a used car. After a while, they get to the point where you can't just get in there and fix it. Is it at that point?
I mean, I think my opinion is I think it's a little irresponsible. And I think when you're making it to make anything about this Tracy Hall project, it comes with the assumption that it's our big focus, right? Like hopefully, like we need to do something about Tracy Hall. We need to
Yeah,
bond
comprehensive.
for it. And I'm
Yes.
saying that you can't bond for that project in a decade. You have to do it within the next 3.
Right, and I see the logic of the stripping out the designated fund. I'm a little nervous about the generator, just because a generator is an actual object that needs to function at Tracy Hall. It is not in the best condition, and that's why I say it's similar to a used car. In your judgment, do you think it can get through a year, or are we just gambling that we can get through a year? Without having that work.
John, go ahead.
So for what it's worth, part of the argument that was made by the opponents of the energy project on the revote was the argument that we were prematurely retiring a generator that hadn't died yet. And the same with the oil.
Oil tank.
So, I can't find the generator line. I know where the designated fund for Tracy Hall is. I saw that.
So yeah.
$49.95.
So it's the cost in the justifications document for that was I think it was a Larry document, was $49,000, but there was a $25,000 designated fund Tracy Hall request, which that is a line item.
Right. So, I mean, I guess the argument against the Tracy Hall non-funding is that we know that is coming, and that if there's funds there, then that reduces what then, you'd put that into the project maybe to reduce that total amount, or you would have it, for additional stuff. We're talking now that when this gets rejuvenated, that we should be thinking about maybe a broader remodel of Tracy Hall that looks not only at HVAC, but just like a reconception of the use of that space. But I'm still looking for the generator.
Line 375, John. It's under emergency management.
Okay.
And don't forget the State House has all batteries now for their generator.
I
Yeah,
saw that. It's pretty sweet. It didn't tell me though how long it can run in an emergency. I didn't see that.
So maybe Herb, can you like further contextual, because a lot of this was informed by a conversation that I had with you, can you, my understanding is the generator for Tracy Hall is $49,000, but we're not seeing a $49,000 savings if we were to make the decision not to not do the generator. So can you contextualize a little bit more of what I'm I suppose recommending?
So right now the generator was fixed to where it does work. We're hoping that was a patchwork that gets us to, 8 months to a year or what have you. The original town manager recommend was an amount that would, based on the work that's being done to the public safety building and the transfer of the current one up to the public works department, uses a certain amount of the existing designated fund. So in order to plan for a new generator at Tracy Hall, the amount that I had recommended under the generator line item would account for finishing up any work necessary for the 2 other locations and would account for a new generator at Tracy Hall. So that amount there. If you decide to, I'm assuming that we could, if it busted down in 8 months to a year, that we might be able to patch it again together for another 8 months or something. But just the reason why I put it in to deal with it was I would rather take $8,000 or $10,000 or whatever and have it go toward a new generator than to have to keep piecing together the current one. But the part of the discussion was that if we were going to do something with Tracy Hall, we could probably take that out because assuming that we could factor that into any overall bond or what have you. And then I'm sure it's more expensive at this point, but with that legislative thing that came out with the State House, that would perk my interest to say, well, if we're moving toward a fossil fuel Tracy Hall at some point, that would be an interesting concept with now a fairly significant building in place with a generator. But I agree with John that not knowing the length of time, if it's just like a UPS type stuff, that's not going to do it. But
so would it be a reduction of 8,000, not 50?
So the
Right.
the line item that I had in there was I had $33,000 in there, and moving forward with our current projects for generators, that 33 is needed in order to replace the Tracy Hall generator in the fiscal year 22 timeframe.
But so there's 25 in it now, and the current budget allocates 25 to it, or is the 25 that's in there what was allocated to it?
So basically there's already an amount that was allocated to go to the existing one as part of this fiscal year. Initially, there's an amount of money that is coming out of this fiscal year to go in there, which I would have to go, I'd have to go check to see if that got allocated in yet. As a for instance, I think it now has. It had not as of back in the October November timeframe, and then that would cover both the new generator and the movement of the DPW, the DPS up to the DPW and get that installed, and then the additional $33,000 would cover with any leftover a new generator for Tracy Hall.
So we need a number and a line item, Herb. That's what I'm kind of asking you to help me with. So if we're saying like, if assuming like if we don't want to fund a new generator for Tracy Hall for savings to help reduce this year's budget impact, what
Yeah.
is the actual number? I thought it was $25,000. It sounds like it might not be.
Sorry, I'm looking. I know I saw it. Problem is finding everything.
Sorry, what are you looking for?
The Tracy Hall generator, like if we decide to bond, like to roll that into a future project, not put any money towards it this year, what is that number? What is the line item?
What is the cost of that generator?
Yeah, like what do we save? Like what's the number?
Yeah.
We know
Yeah,
it cost $49,000, but we're not doing, that's not the budget impact for this year.
So in our designated funds document, it says that the November 24th balance was 25,000 essentially,
Right.
with a current year appropriation of 25,000. So I think that is the current year appropriation.
Yeah, that's what I thought too.
So I don't think there's 50 in it. I think there's 25, which means that you're basically 25 short of paying for a new generator.
There's 20.
Right, but we might not want to if we take on this approach that I'm suggesting, which we might not.
So then it would be a reduction of 25,000, right? We just wouldn't, I don't think we can raid the fund, right?
So
Okay.
in the designated fund document as well, estimated balance of June 30th, 2021 is 17,000, a little over 17,000.
And that's after you taking care of the Department of Public Safety building, the DPW movement up there. So you have about 17 grand left over. If you add 33,000 to that based on my original request, you will cover the entire expense of a Tracy Hall new generator.
And so Roger's argument is don't fund the entire.
Right. And if you don't fund the entire amount, pick an amount. And I'm not going to do a generator for FY22, but that you would be on notice for if you don't do a Tracy Hall project, you'd be on notice for next year's budget cycle that I'm going to request additional funds to get a generator for Tracy Hall.
It's really a reduction of 25,000, right? It's the designated fund contribution and then reducing repairs and maintenance from 10 to 5, right?
I still haven't heard a number.
You pick a number, Roger. That's the point I'm trying to make is I need 33,000 after the end of this fiscal year if I'm going to do a new generator in fiscal year 22 at Tracy Hall.
I see.
If you're essentially going to hold off on that, say for a year, you can reduce it by any amount that you want to because I won't have enough money to buy a new generator. But for the budget next year, I'll need that amount plus in order to do the generator. That's my point. So it's you can pick the political number that you want to go there because any number less than the 33, I can't fund a new generator at Tracy Hall.
I think it should be 30.
Sorry, why 33 and not 25?
Yeah, that's why I didn't see that number anywhere. That's why I'm asking.
So we have 25 in there now. A generator's like 48. Why is it not like 23 or 25?
By the end of this fiscal year, you will have a certain amount in the designated fund, which was the amount that Claudette just said, which was like 15 grand or what have you.
17, I think.
17.
So 15 grand plus, so that number plus the 33 gives you the amount of money that you need
Gives
for
you
Tracy
50.
I
Hall.
see.
You see what I'm saying? Because there's funding that's in there existing. It's going to be spent this fiscal year to ultimately pay for the Department of Public Safety new generator and the transfer of the old one up to DPW. So
I think we should cut the designated fund of 20 and take out 30 from, funding the generator for this year. That would make 50, a cut of 50. What do you guys think?
The other thing.
Go ahead, Roger.
the other thing is we're spending a lot of time talking about the generator, which I think is like a worthwhile thing, but I'm also asking everyone to join me in it sounds like the $20,000 appropriation to Tracy Hall, like I'm asking for that. And then there's also the maintenance line item too. So we could say, if we're feeling uncomfortable about the generator, you may wish to like leave the generator alone, but like make some of the other cuts. Although Claudette, I think I've maybe, yeah. So I think Claudette might have already made that cut on her, but oh, no, she didn't, I don't think.
You
actually.
realize the 20 grand designated fund for Tracy Hall has nothing to do with the generator, right? The
I
generator,
know,
Yep.
yeah, I know, but I'm
Funny.
woo, this is wild. So anyway, maybe I shouldn't have said that, but there's a couple of Tracy Hall things. Like there's the generator, which we've now all talked about, which sounds like it's 33. And then there's the $20,000 to Tracy Hall itself. And then there's this line item of budget and repairs. And I'm saying,
There's three things, yeah.
bond the whole thing, but in the next, 3 years. But I think what Herb is saying is just like, well, I kind of need it like in the next year. And if we're forming a task force that will look at Tracy Hall as part of their work at a future agenda item. But if we think that their work is going to come up with a recommendation to deal with that building, then that's fine. But I guess if in our heart of hearts, if we know that a year is not possible, then we shouldn't really be doing this decision about the generator. Do you hear what I'm saying?
Yes.
So
Go ahead.
I'm thinking that I just need to take a break here for a minute.
Woo.
So I know we haven't come to any agreement or consensus, but I would really like us to just
Take a 10-minute
Take
break,
10
that
minutes.
kind of break.
to see if this is the best and to really think about, is this process working?
Okay, you're proposing an
I'm
action
proposing a
break?
10-minute break.
Okay,
So we,
so 8:10 or whatever it is,
it's
no,
7:58 now, so 8:08.
8:08.
Cool.
Okay, we'll be back at 8:08. Oh, 8:08. The select board is here, as is our town manager. And I'm gonna go back to my original proposal. This process may be working for some people, but it's not working for me. I want us to go back and go section by section and agree, hopefully come to agreement on the yellow items. And as we trickle down into the bigger ticket items and the bigger philosophical discussions, we address them as they come. So I'm going to ask Herb to share his screen. And unless I hear some very strong objections to doing it that way, I can't see that we're going to be very efficient. So I'm not hearing, and I hate the little small pictures too, but so I'm going to defer the generator question until we get to it. But I see John had his hand up.
Well, I was just going to say that I thought the idea was
You're really wonky with your video. I mean, your audio.
Yeah. Is that better?
No. Was it an objection to going the section by section, John?
I think he's typing it out for us. He says we could start at the top and skip the small things and then come back through for the small ones.
Okay,
Mary says she agrees.
that works. That works too. So as we scroll through there's no big things in the town administration. No big things in BCA or statutory meetings.
They're going to be in DPW and the fire department and the police department, I think. Right?
Well, there's, depends on if you, under town clerk, the designated funds for record restoration. It's a $5,000 item. There's funding that's coming through the state, so I say we level fund, we don't fund that this year again.
I
For
mean,
which line is that?
so it's line 81, and Bonnie has her hand up.
I'm gonna go to select board first. Anybody have objections to that?
It's the same way as the fire fund apparatus money was supportive of taking a hold on their funding for at least one cycle, I think maybe
John,
two.
your audio is, I don't know what it is. It's very, very, very garbled.
I mean, we can hear him, so he sounds like a Star Wars character, but it's fine, right?
I
So
couldn't understand him though.
Just go to Bonnie.
If you want to speak through the chat.
Bonnie has his hand up, but I think John's point was just, like, same with the fire department. We didn't fund last year with the understanding that we would, fund in the following
Put it
year.
back in.
And so he's
Yes.
pointing out that we're not being consistent with what we say we would do. So Bonnie has her hand up. Claudette, I don't know who else it is.
Go ahead, Bonnie.
You have to push *6, Bonnie.
Okay, Claudette, I never said there was additional money coming from the state. What I said was that there are additional funds that we can take from recordings and add to a record restoration fund.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Due to COVID, I'm feeling a little bit more anxious about having more images online. And I know normally we've been trying to do some of the back indexing ourselves, but I'm feeling pressured that I have to talk to COTS and ask them to do some additional scanning and possibly do the back indexing as well, which is going to increase the cost in my records restoration. So I was kind of hoping for the 5,000 this year and then see where I stand monetarily and what I can work out with COTS.
So what I see in the designated fund for records restoration is almost $32,000.
Well, I think it's going to be more than, I do think it'll be more than that. Not a whole lot, but not knowing because we've been doing the back indexing ourselves. I don't know what the costs are to have them do the indexing and release the documents to the public, or release the documents so that I can release images for a 40-year search.
Okay. So I'm just going to bring it back to the board. Leave it or pull it?
Leave it in there.
I mean, 3 folks are having it omitted, if I understand Rob's line item correctly. So it's.
No, I made a mistake on transferring, copying the values into that section.
So are you for
So
leaving
I'm
it?
for leaving. I'm for leaving it.
Okay, so that's 3. So it stays then. Moving down to finance department. Yeah, the bigger one there is the independent audit. So Herb is proposing 17,000 and rolling average has it at closer to the 13.5 that Roger and I have. John's a little lower.
So Claudette, that was under a 3-year contract with Bonnie Batchelder, and the original contract did not anticipate a single audit, which we had because of the July 1/17 storm from last year, and that was in the 2019 audit. So starting this particular fiscal year that you're considering, you don't have a 3-year contract anymore. So I assume that the reason why the 17 went in was the assumption that it would go up from the 15.5.
But since we are all over the place, what's the board's pleasure?
So mine's just a 3-year average. I hear what Herb's saying, but, you know, the actuals for the current are not 15.5, they were less than 12.
I'd be okay with 13.5.
Me too.
So you okay, John, with 13.5? Roger?
Yeah, that's what I wrote.
So, okay, it's 13.5. General administration. My proposal here is to use 25,000 from the undesignated fund to bring us up to that 50,878.
And was that the IT issue?
Yes, designated fund equipment. John?
I would like to reiterate my objection from the last 2 sessions that it's important, I think, to not conflate a spending decision with a financing decision. So if you're talking about that you're really saying 50,000, but you're paying for half of that by reducing the undesignated fund, that's a financing decision. And you're going to get really confused about what we've decided to spend on by doing that. I would advocate for us to just decide what we want to spend and then have a discussion at the end about how we finance it.
I agree.
That makes sense. Say keep it at 50,878.
Okay. Then it stays at 5878. Moving down to listers, I don't think there's any. The reappraisal reserve. So Roger was down to 23,000 and Rob at 38,000. Given, Roger, can you?
It was just a priority decision. I believed it could be deferred. Obviously we have more information on the CLA. My suggestion is to take how many properties there are in Norwich or whatever, not properties, whatever the word is, whatever number of things that need to be inspected, times it by 100 and use that number. And use that number as what you are, and then figure out how much you want to fund until 2023 when we need to do a reappraisal. So I could try to do that math and we can come back to it. But I mean, I think, yeah, I don't know what the numbers were based in. I think it was based in $200.
$200, wasn't it? But I can't remember the number of properties.
And I thought that was high from a Google search.
It's gonna be 1,200 properties? I don't know.
Cheryl would know. And she's an attendee. But there's also the fact that we only have looking. We only have $62,000 in the designated fund right now. But Cheryl, do you have the number of properties?
Right. Can you hear me, Cheryl Lindbergh?
Yep.
Okay. So we have 1,700 is the number we've been using. The way that Norwich determines a parcel is different than other towns, big surprise. So anyway, and as we have said, we would want all parcels to be reviewed, not just taxable parcels. So 1,700 was the number we had used. I think that with our budget in particular, we had held our budget at a pretty flat amount and wanted to shift the dollars that we had from the other line item to this line item to fund this, because the cost of it will be something that is, it's happening now. The cause of the reappraisal urgency is what's going on right now. And those dollars are there to shift from one line item to another and get us to where we believe we will need to be by 2023. So that's where the 43,000 evolved from, was to keep our department budget as level as possible and to retain dollars that we had in the budget for the reappraisal that needs to happen from current sales that are occurring. It's all being pushed by what is taking place right now. So
If you go by the 1,700 times 200 at 340,000, so you got to chunk it out over a few years, you know, that might be 2
Right.
years, 3 years. So
Cheryl, you did it $150 per parcel in your justification.
yeah, I'm trying to think out loud about that. I don't think we used 200.
okay.
We had, thank you for that, Herb, because I had heard 200 in the presentation.
Yeah, I thought I had too.
Um,
Okay.
Did I thought I always used 100. Well, whatever. We're getting it.
Yeah, we're splitting hairs.
So the question is, do we keep it at 43,000 that's requested? John?
John had it at that.
John's nods yes.
Okay.
Mary? Mary's okay.
Yeah, I guess so.
Roger?
I'm still fine with where I am, but you have a majority at 43, so.
Okay, so it stays, I'll check in with Rob, but I'm a third, so it stays in at 43.
May I ask?
That's good.
May I make one other point? So part of this 43 is funded through state dollars that we receive. Because we get a per parcel amount in from the state every year. So I just wanted to mention that part to it.
No, this 43 is separate from.
No?
But it doesn't, it's,
We don't usually talk about that there may be an offsetting revenue.
right.
It's good to keep in mind.
Yeah, maybe we should.
Let's just keep going. Under planning, I don't think there's a big. Nope. Rec. Nothing under administration, rec programs. So it's, then it would be rec.
Tennis court, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's, I mean, the rec field care, there's a $2,000 variation between high and low.
What line item, Claudette? That'll help.
205.
Oh, 205.
I would support the 7,000 that Roger and Claudette had, given the explanation that we had, given the explanation we had at the meeting.
I'd be okay with 7,000.
Okay, so
Me
that
too.
brings, that's 3, so that's 7,000. I'm not gonna the line marking isn't that big a deal, but it's now's the tennis courts.
I'd like to come down on mine. I'll come down to Roger's number.
Wish I understood this one better because I know that we just resurfaced it, and I struggle to understand why we're saying that after just resurfacing it, we're planning to have to.
So Herb is the one who put in, so the department head recommendation was 7,500 and then Herb had more, and then I just split the difference when that happened. So maybe to answer your question, maybe Herb might have some insight, John, I don't know.
So the Bree is much better attuned at this, but basically what's happened is the tennis court surfacing has failed to the point where we basically need to redo the entire tennis courts. We're looking into applying for a grant to cover a significant portion of that. Hopefully we can get some dollars donated to help match that, with the idea that we do get a lot of folks that are non-residents that use the tennis court. And we also have team sports out there when they're in good condition. But right now it's such that it's very difficult to have team-related sports out there because of the poor condition of the cracking. So the idea was
I did remember all that. I just actually mean the fundamental point of how. Am I remembering it wrong? Didn't we resurface it in the last year?
We resurfaced
No.
it like a year and a half ago, and but even after the resurfacing, it all cracked open again.
So it was 2.5 years ago. It was when Jill was here, and that's how we got the last resurfacing under warranty, but it was just a patching. And when I talked to Jill, I actually consulted with Jill after my budget presentation, and she said for the last 12 years she's been told that the tennis courts are failing, but that we could keep resurfacing them. And so when I talked to the consultants, they said at this point we cannot do it any longer. And the fact that they've been failing repeatedly, I think does speak to the fact that 12 years of being told that it needs to be done, we probably need to pay attention to that now.
Thank you.
Yep.
Linda Cook has her hand up. John, if you restart your Zoom and re-enter the meeting, that would help with the audio?
Or just use your telephone?
I did it, but I'll do it again.
Linda Cook has her hand up, Claudette.
Go ahead, Linda.
That's what I was going to bring up. I cannot understand John at all.
Okay. John, if reconnecting to the audio doesn't work, could you use your phone as your audio?
So Mary, did I hear that you said that you're fine with 10.2?
Yes.
Okay. So Bob, since you're 9.3, are you okay with 10.2?
Yeah, you keep driving my numbers up, but yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know.
Yeah, so, okay, I guess it's 10-2 because I saw John's with the thumbs up. Moving down to public safety, designated fund, fire police station. 4 of us were not funding, so unless one of the 4 changed their mind, it's no funding. Moving down to police department. It would be the down under community. No, even those aren't really big.
what is the part-time officer wage thing that needs to be clarified? Because Becky ended up sending us something to consider, like, I understand that there was like a mix-up in how the funds were drawn, but
Yeah,
that doesn't reconcile with the historical, like, that doesn't change the historical actuals, does it?
right. No, there was because the figures were figured out more or less after the audit was done, we're stuck with the actual number for the previous fiscal year. A lot of the amount should have gone up under the police officer wage side of stuff rather than the part-time officer. So it's just, the reason why it's a red there is just to identify that there's an outlier there that factored in.
An outlier, meaning that the
Well,
line item allocation is not what it should be.
Well, right, the audit that we had, we didn't catch it in time for the audit. So we all understand it, the police chief, Becky and I, but there's some funding in that particular line item that went in that shouldn't have.
So the line item was messed up for the previous fiscal year, but were the actuals messed up for all the prior 3 years?
No.
Okay, so the numbers that we have for the previous fiscal year back to FY17, I believe, were often presented,
Yeah,
are accurate.
Yeah.
Okay, so that doesn't change. So just that's in red, so it doesn't change my number. Last year's error doesn't change my number. Just so you know.
So, and I think John's was probably a rolling average. And
I'm willing to come down. I'll come down to yours, Claudette.
to the 1600.
Yeah.
Roger, you okay with that?
I'm at 13, but John is at 15, so maybe he'll come to 16 for you to get 3.
Or Rob or John?
I'll go.
Join the meeting.
What number are we looking at? Which one do you?
1600.
Yeah, 1600.
Line
I'll-
240.
I'll go that way.
Okay. So that's a 1600. Moving down to commune. Nothing. No biggies there. No biggies in, I don't think. Well, the cruiser maintenance is kind of all over the board. And
The numbers are for 3 cruisers. Like all these numbers reflect a fleet of 3. Is that right?
Currently
Yes.
for a fleet of 4.
No,
If you get onto the schedule, the recycling schedule of cruisers, eventually we can get it down to 3 with the 4th one just dying away. And keeping up on that replacement, then we can go with 3 cruisers. If you don't do so, the bottom line is that we need another new cruiser. If you don't do that, then you've got to be sensitive to having the cruiser maintenance be higher than it should be with newer cruisers. Then if you have newer cruisers, your maintenance will be a little bit down. If you maintain the current fleet of cruisers, which is 1 new one and 3 older ones, that cruiser maintenance is going to continue to be fairly high. Keeping in mind that we had a wheel drop off of one of them.
Ew. I don't like that.
The numbers are based on 4 cars, not 3 cars.
Correct.
Even though we know that the chief has told us that the future fleet is 3.
And we're not talking about buying one this year then.
We would like to buy one this year.
Oh, yeah, I know, but we're not, right?
I'm going to come back to Langus' decision that's a decision for the board to make outside of the budget process. Right now, you're just deciding whether you're going to have funding go into into the designated fund, and a function of the cruiser maintenance relates to whether or not you fund that
Right.
designated fund.
So that's relatively small. So I'm okay with this. Let's see.
The chief has her hand up. But yeah.
Go ahead, Chief.
I'm sorry, that was a holdover. I had pulled it down. I was trying to answer the question regarding the number that we had in the fleet. It's since been answered.
Okay. So, and these, just can you clarify for us? And I apologize. These numbers that you've done in this budgeting are reflective of 4 cars or 3 cars?
These budget numbers are for 4 cars. Our intention is to move down to the 3 vehicles. And as soon as we have vehicles that sufficiently will be able to maintain, the 4th one will drop off, and we have no intention of replacing it.
Okay. Thank you. So, I mean, so I guess you see my dilemma here, but the future fleet is 3 cars. Like currently it's 4, but we're budgeting for 4, even though we want 3. So, you know, you can do a simple math, take the number and then divide by 3 and then make reductions. So Chief has her hand up again.
If I could just add, similar to the Norwich Fire Department, when we put in a purchase for vehicles, there's a fairly extended time frame. If you recall, back in August of 2019, we received permission to purchase the vehicle, and we only just received it December of 2020. So some of the reason that there's the extended money for the maintenance is that even once we put in a purchase for a vehicle, there will be a length of time before that vehicle is actually upfitted and ready for use.
And so the equipment, but I'm sorry, Claudette, I need clarity on this. Some of the cruiser equipment line item, is that number reflective of 4 or 3 cars? Like some of these other line items too.
Sure, I can speak to the cruiser equipment. That really runs the gamut. It's everything from the snow rakes that we have to use to clear the snow off. It can cover the gloves and PPE that's in the cruisers. It also includes the myriad of things that we have, the unlock tools to help motorists who, for example, get locked out of their vehicles, cones and flares that we use when we respond to different types of motor vehicle crashes. Cruiser supplies really runs the gamut. It also includes the equipment we use to keep them clean. So the brushes for washing the cars and the soap that goes to washing the vehicles. And I know that sounds small, but those items add up fairly quickly.
And it's for 4 vehicles that you budgeted for, not for 3.
Correct. So that would be 4 snow brushes, 4 unlock tools, etc. Because we have to, once a vehicle is ordered, we're still looking at a very extended period of time before that would come in and be usable.
I come down to John's number, but I don't want to go really low on this.
And I'll go up to John's number.
I'll go down. It's not much anyway, so.
So we're at John's number for that cruiser maintenance. Moving down to designated funds, special equipment.
So I think this is an instance where 3 have said 0. So if Mary and Rob want to make arguments, like, right? Like, is that how that works?
Yeah, seemingly, unless.
Well,
I'll go to
okay.
0.
Done. Move on.
Yeah, that's 4. Okay, designated fund cruiser. And there's 3 that have not funded designated fund cruiser.
It's yours is with the caveat that you're going for a special article to take from the undesignated fund balance, Claudette.
Yeah, but I don't hear, unless we can leave it as an article and vote it down on Monday.
Right.
So, leave it there. Moving down then.
So where are you leaving it?
Living at 0.
unless John Langus wants to
It's
change,
wearing- Yeah.
and I don't know if John's still here.
I think he's he's there, but not. He's on the phone. Are you
I
on?
give him a chance to weigh in.
I'm gonna stop the sharing of the screen so I can try to see if I can find John.
Yeah, he's there.
John, where are you?
He's calling.
Yeah.
Am I unmuted now?
Yeah, look, and you sound like yourself.
Reasonable.
Great. Yeah, no, I would vote tomorrow to order a Tesla Cruiser that was all electric, but no.
Okay. So you're still at, yeah, just to clarify, you're still designated fund
Sure.
cruisers at 0.
Yep.
Okay. So that's 3. Looking down to fire. Oh, no, wait a minute. Yeah, fire. Nothing big under fire, fast, EMS, education, tools, equipment. Fire truck repair and maintenance. There's 3 at 14.5, so. Going down. We already talked about the designated fund for apparatus and the designated fund. Did we clarify designated fund? We didn't talk about designated fund equipment.
We did. But we have 3 at 20, so either John or you should convince us differently.
I'm going by the town manager's recommendation of 10,000. That's why I was at 10. And John is a thumbs up at 10.
I mean, I split the difference whenever I saw that. Is that right?
Are you okay with 10 though?
I mean, I heard, compelling argument for apparatus. I feel like, I don't know. I can't ask more. I'm where I am.
Mary?
3 at 20. I want to stick there.
Okay, then we stay at 20. Emergency management. I don't think there's a biggie there. Designated. Now we're at generators.
There we go.
We said it all. We just need to decide.
I'm fine with, no, we're all at 25, so we decided.
Oh.
Well, I said, so I made my arguments. I think we should zero it out. And, I thought I had some consensus, but maybe I don't.
I'm okay with zeroing it out.
So the other thing is we could do something in the middle based on the assumption that our preference is to make it part of a larger Tracy Hall capital plan. But if there is an emergency, we will buy a used generator reflecting, I think, the sense of the board that we do not want to buy a 25-year life fossil fueled asset.
I can live with that argument.
I like the argument, but what would be the value of the used generator? Would it be 20?
Nothing.
25,000?
The benefit of buying a used one, you wouldn't save a ton of money on it, but you would be able to sell it again as soon as you got that capital plan in place for virtually what you paid for it. So you take a big hit when you buy them used, and then or you take some hit like a car when it's used, but then it's basically valued on how many hours of run on it. So if it's basically the same number of hours a year or two later than it was when you bought it, you're going to be able to sell it for a similar amount of money. So in that 3-year process, once you've sold it again, you've probably spent a few $1,000 on that generator. Do you agree with that basic description, Herb?
Just to pick on you, if we sold it, that's just keeping the fossil fuel working. It's not reducing your carbon footprint or whatever. So if you whatever organization uses it, it's still going to be using it for fossil fuel. Sorry, it's just more of a joke.
That's why you buy it used. That's why you buy it used, because someone already made that decision.
No, I understand that, but if we just pass the buck. Sorry, I'm just picking.
So John, are you proposing coming down from your 25,000, or are you staying at 25,000?
I was thinking somewhere in the middle of zeroing it out and the full fund of 33, so maybe 15 or something like that.
Wasn't a big patch job? I heard $8,000 for a big patch job. Is that what Herb had said?
For a big what job?
Yeah, I did say that, but I got to go back and look at the bills for that.
I go down to 10.
10 works for me.
10 works for me.
Okay.
I'm fine with 10 based on the understanding that that's a big patch job. I don't want to, these numbers are becoming increasingly arbitrary, and I'm basing it in the fact that, $8,000 is a patch job, 10,000 would allow for that potentially.
I'm also interested in the battery idea. So maybe we'll have different thinking about how to solve the problem.
Okay, moving on. Going down to Public Works.
Is this where we would take out the laborer?
Yep.
It's already out.
If it's already out, okay.
So then if we go down to materials. Sorry,
I'm fine with Rob Gear's number. I think he took the number between John and me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm fine with that too, with Rob Gear's number. Sand, John, are you, we have 3 at 105. Gravel and stone.
I don't, yeah,
I rounded up to 12,000 from John's 11,845. So that's, and John's was a rolling average. Or no, sorry, dust control I'm talking about. And then we have 3 other.
Some of these look big, but it's just the difference of my averaging process.
Yeah.
So, we probably don't need to linger on each one of those. It's not a philosophical difference. Except for the general budgeting matter, I believe that averaging is a more sound process, but I don't have to get into that on every line item.
I mean, Rob has done the work of averaging the going further in the middle, so you could take that.
What
Okay,
I did, for reference, what I did on a different sheet was average previous 4 years, if the information was there, and then averaged the other select board members and Herb, and if there was something wildly high or low, I dropped that out.
okay.
What about 15?
I go 15,
Me too.
15.
But moving on, since I hear John's argument that except for if you add up all of these, we have to either decide whether to go with John's rolling average or Rob's rolling average for all the others, but we can talk about that after. I guess we're gonna go down to equipment. And there's really nothing there. The garage. Actually, yeah, there's some of these are designated fund for the garage. I don't know, honestly, I don't know why I funded this. But there's 4 for 25,000, so it stays. So grants are in the green, we already know, never mind. Looking at capital expenditures, the designated fund for equipment.
So what's your argument, Claudette? Because you have 4 people are all in agreement. What is your thinking on equipment?
I can't remember, so I guess it's, or I just wanted to fund it with what we had. Or was it?
It's an undesignated fund.
Yeah, I think you were just trying to level fund from last year.
Yeah, but sidewalk, we actually have 3 at 14,000. My argument for not funding this up to that was until we have a sidewalk inventory.
I mean, I feel too, like, we have, like, I know the capital budget exists, so multiple projects can be taken out at once, of course. But I feel like, to take on Tracy Hall next, and then to continue to fund our bridges and our paving at a high level, I feel like sidewalks can, come after that. But I know, yeah, so I don't think that I think we should take a little, I think we should pause in the funding for it for the moment.
I think we should keep it in there because it was based on a study that would be saving towards eventual replacement. So I'm gonna, my inclination is to keep it.
Okay.
We also have already not funded it for the last 2 years.
Yeah.
Okay. And yeah, nothing I can say about the next 2.
I think paving is something that we have a lot. We've always funded it at that number, and we've presumably produced good results for what we have funded. And so to do anything else would, make a different decision. So I'm okay. Like, so I see John has 226 based on averages, and then Rob did a further average. Like, I'm fine with I'm fine with the 250 based on that logic, but you know.
Sorry, mine was not based on averages there. Mine was based on, there was in the last version of this, there was another line item
I
that
see.
referred to a grant.
I see.
That was, so this was meant to be the part that didn't get funded with the grant, and that line item is out. So mine, I would be agreeing with you guys at 275 actually.
Okay. Great.
So we have, Roger is okay with Rob's 250.
Well, with when I thought that the 226 was an average, but it wasn't.
Okay, so do you want to stay at your 275 then?
I do.
Okay, then. And then we have 3 for the $100,000 for the bridge fund.
So Herb has said that if we don't fund at 100, like the capital projects are linked to the 175 amount. And so, you know, so I'm like more keen on 175, but I do say that we could potentially defer Chapel Hill, which I think is actually only a savings of 7,800. Is that right, Herb?
Yes.
So, you know, I feel like, I don't know.
Should probably go for that 175, I think.
So like so I think I'm actually closer to 175, but I'm willing to knock out $7,800 if we want to defer Chapel Hill, but it's such a marginal amount. But I don't know, perhaps my thinking on perhaps how I'm thinking about the funding of these things is really flawed based on what John has said to me earlier in the meeting. So I don't know.
No, I don't think on this one. I agree with the 175. Actually, I agree to change mine.
Likewise.
Okay. So it goes to 175. Moving down to designated fund equipment. I just don't think we need to spend $15,000 on, or yeah, $15,000 on a new mower.
And the full $15,000 was towards that purchase in the capital plan?
Yes, sir. That's my
Didn't
understanding.
It was going to replace having to mow it with 2 mowers that were already
That
degraded.
we already have.
Well, also that are getting long in the tooth.
I would
Or
agree
get
to
more.
defer this based on the other decisions we've been making to increase things.
Anybody else willing to defer that 15,000?
I mean, one of my questions is like, if we have less labor, do we need, like, how does that change some of the other line items? But
We don't have less labor. We have the same labor.
anyway, I don't know how much of the decision, some of this was informed by having more labor, because there was also, you know what I mean? Because the original.
So from my understanding, my recollection from Larry was that it would be a 72-inch mower that would be more efficient for Huntley Meadow, which probably would be, but it would be less efficient for some of the other smaller places. But
If we leave them running 2, in theory, that's twice the labor, unless the 72 inches is not twice as fast. The other thing I brought up with Larry is that there are electric zero-turn commercial mowers,
right,
that are fairly in pretty much the same price range.
Yeah, I mean, that's more of a compelling reason to me to, defer the equipment of this fossil fuel equipment, you know, particularly for these small engines that are available. So for that reason, I'm willing to jump on ship and zero it out.
So that's 3 to
So
0.
instead of buying an electric mower,
Well, we have,
yeah,
there is also money. Hold on. I'm losing all my papers. It, it's the, again, it's the whole argument. They've got the money in the designated fund to purchase this outright.
okay.
This year, based on where the budget is, I just think it needs to be not funded. And if they choose to purchase an electric or a vehicle, they have, or a mower, they have funds. It just is, will drop it down. I don't think it's a need right now.
Okay. So I'll pull out 15.
Okay, so that's level funded. Or not funded, sorry. Going down. Designated fund equipment for the transfer station. And I believe this is a shed.
Which one? That one.
That we didn't want to even consider funding last year, just because we didn't feel it. I can't really recall the reason why, but I also think, again, it's, if we're looking at the overall budget and what is a need versus a want, this is a want to me.
If it's truly the shed, then I'm not on board with it. You can zero it.
0 is fine.
So we're down to 0 then for that. Unless Herb, unless you know that it's not the shed. I believe it is the shed.
But it wasn't so much the shed as so much a processing location for single-use plastics. So, you know, in some ways, when we say we don't want to fund the shed, we're saying we don't want our community, we don't want to have sorting for single-use plastic.
No, that's not true. There is I want to call it the COVID shed. There was a purchase of some garden shed to the tune of $7,500 or $7,000, around there. That was used for COVID, in the early days of COVID. I don't know what it's being used for now, but it certainly could be used as a sorting center for the thin film plastic. Will it last 10 years? Probably not, but in light of this year, that's my argument for not funding that.
Typically, this line item covers the compactors that are out there, which are a much more robust cost in the long run.
Yeah, but I'm not sure that's what that was.
No, I'm just saying that's what this line item typically is used for. I'm not trying to argue the point of a shed.
So is a compactor listed in the capital, like the capital plan? And if so, for what fiscal year? Oh, sorry.
Right now, there's not one in the current capital budget that we would need to replace. I'm just saying, this goes back to Langus's differentiation between making a decision on a topic versus funding the designated fund for you to be able to make decisions in the future.
I know, but like the designated, so I guess we should talk about this separately. We should get through this work, but like the designated fund as a funding source, the capital budget informs how I treat the funding source of them, doesn't it? So
I'm just saying that typically this funds the compactors. Right now, there's not a compactor need in the next 5 to 6 years because they seem to be operating well. But again, when you do end up having to purchase one, they are fairly expensive. So having a fund to be able to pay for a good chunk of it for the future, whether it's in the capital budget or now, that's one of those. I'm agreeing with you, Roger, that we continue to have that examination so that when we get to that time frame, we can figure out what at least our glass ceiling is for what we want in that designated fund.
And the rationalization for this level of funding for this year was the shed.
That's fine. Yeah.
Okay. I'm not arguing that point at all.
I want to make sure that I'm not doing like harm like to my community. Like if this designated fund for equipment is for like compactors, then, and also the shed, I want to make sure that the compactors are funded. And also if it goes towards the maintenance of the compactor, then maintenance may be better suited for an operating expense. And the designated fund, then the compactor needs to be added to the capital budget, right? Okay, I'm done.
Yep.
Okay, great. So I'm just looking for some help.
So, okay. So where do people want to go with this 536, number 536?
I think 0.
0.
So we're 2 at 0, 3 at 0.
What else here?
I gotta see.
Always.
Tracy Hall. Nothing. The undesignated fund for Tracy Hall. Roger's argument was no funding. I'm buying his argument, so I'm a 0. I'm on no fund.
I'm okay with that for this year.
Excuse me. So that's no fund.
I'm sorry, which line was that?
550.
Okay.
John, what do you think on that? If I may, Claudia.
I think that's fine. I support looking for the big project to sort of cover that. So I'm supportive of that.
Okay. So that takes us through all the bigs. So unless there's disagreement, we just need to decide, are we okay with averaging for the remainder of the yellow items? And if we are, whose average do we take, Rob or John's?
Well, I think some of them, Claudette, weren't just averages. I think some of them had 3s, like, right?
Well, if I saw something that was wildly out of line, so 4 select board members, 3 select board members agreed on one number, and the 4th was 20% of that.
Yeah.
I didn't average that in. I assumed that was a statement of radical opinion, underlying concept of it, but not that it isn't valid.
So you drop the outliers, which is kind of
right.
like what you would do if you were looking at a
right.
And then John's were actuals for 3 years, right? 3-year actuals.
Yes. Occasionally where there was a weird one, I would do the most recent budget instead of, so the last 2 years, the last budget, and then the 2 actuals before that.
So I can go either way. I don't have a strong preference. Does anybody have a?
It sounds like Rob's was true, maybe true consensus. So
Oh, Rob's.
I hope so.
Johnny?
Yeah, I mean, it seems like a little bit odd. It's not in fact consensus, right? It's an average of,
No.
of guesses of things that are inherently unpredictable, which I'll say for the last time, the logic between back year averaging is these are things that no one knows what it will cost. And whatever it is, we're going to have to pay for it because they're things like maintenance or sand and so because none of us can prognosticate, I think the wise thing is to just base it on history, by and large. But I'm certainly not going to die on my sword over it.
Roger, where did you come out with? What were your thoughts?
I don't, I think John's point is valid, but in order to honor his point, we need to begin looking line by line again. So I don't know.
Where are we at now? 4,160,116.
Yeah, but remember there were about 5 or 6 lines in one section that I didn't copy correctly. So mine is going to be sadly higher than it looks.
But on the agreed budget, that is about, it's readjusts as you go, right?
Yes, but most of them are not all the way filled in. So.
Oh, okay. That's why. That's why it's lower. Yeah. Okay.
Can someone tell me real quick, what is line 26?
26?
Yeah.
That's way up there.
So
Yeah,
that
because I thought we were going back to the top and going
Administration.
to the small ones now.
That's a committee line item, and since you guys had started a bunch of new committees, I was giving them trying to budget some money for intangibles, if you will, for your particular committees, whether it's audit committee, finance committee, solid waste committee, health, childcare committee, that sort of thing. So that's why I put some numbers in there. That's all, but it's not a typically funded item.
Okay.
It includes 5,000 for Herb's committee, which oh, sorry, Mary.
Yeah, I was just saying, just only on the child care committee, part of the charge was perhaps to develop a survey. So if that involved any kind of mailing, we might need to have a bit of a budget.
So how?
But I don't think we need 6,300.
How about? Would 3,000 sound like at least a place to start?
I think it sounds generous.
Looking at all the committees, if they all
need something. I would cut it down from that. I do a couple thousand.
Well, you're currently at 6,300, but
yeah, no, but yeah, I know that was how I started, but I don't think that's right at all.
So half it? 3,000, Mary?
Sure.
John, you are okay with 3,000, right?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure. Me
so
too.
It gets us back down to what average do we use? And I don't want to go line by line again either. I think we should just pick. Whether or pick Herb's or select Herb's recommendation for all the yellows.
Well, mine will probably be higher.
Yeah.
They are going to be high.
I say
I'm fine with doing Rob, so I think we need to touch on this line just to make sure of the issue that he mentioned, that he didn't think that some of them have been transcribed correctly.
Okay, so we'll go with Rob's, and this is not, I mean, we vote on this budget on Wednesday,
You're right.
so give us a day to really look at it. Okay?
So do we want, can we quickly go through that so we have a sense of where we're at right now? Like, so can we add in this column so we can see the number?
I'd like to do that.
Right.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that last comment.
So if we leave those things yellow that you're filling in now,
They would not be reflected in the bottom line if we don't fill
They-
them in.
yeah, I mean, we'd see what we had, but we would know if we had, where we had to go back and check them again. In other words, if,
Yeah.
I think they're small enough
That's,
that
that's a good
I think the
idea.
average approach is probably fine.
let's see how bad it
Yeah,
is
it's
when
just that
we
there
get to
may
the
be
bottom.
mistakes, Mary, and so Rob's suggestion is that if we leave them yellow, then as we each check through, we should be able to find the mistakes if there are
Well,
any,
that's
because we've
true.
left them yellow, so we know which ones are at risk.
I see.
I think that was a smart suggestion, Rob.
Yes. Yep.
Okay. I'm just gonna step aside while Herb fills in cells.
So, and on the ones where Rob left these items blank, exclamation point, are we
Yeah,
okay
then-
using my average on those?
Let's use John's for those.
I already put yours in, John.
Oof.
That way, when it comes in high, I can blame it on you.
Oh God.
Hmm.
Wait, I don't think that.
Wait, something happened there.
Mistake, something happened.
No,
Yeah.
I just colored them. So anything that's still Rob's color is going to be yellow. I'll change it at the end, but I just wanted to get the numbers in more.
No.
Yeah,
No.
but I'm 800 on line 181.
Oh, okay.
Something happened.
Oh yeah.
I don't.
You tried to save time with your copy pasting.
And just as an aside, the reason why I went back 4 years was because of 2017 and the trouble it caused in 2018. lines.
The gutting process.
Damn it.
Oh, I'm unmuted. Well, you all heard me say what a gutting process. Sorry. I'll mute myself now.
Sorry, I'm in my, look, oh. I'm in my, I can't get up to my share screen. There we go. Oh, I did something wrong. Hold on. Oh. You turn me off, Roger?
I gave it back to you so you could do it.
Sorry, I hit the wrong. $11.49%.
Yeah, wild.
Hmm.
Cheryl Lindbergh has her hand up.
Go ahead, Cheryl.
Just watching the process that Herb went through, Cheryl Lindbergh, 59 Koch Road. I think there's some numbers that are larger than perhaps the 3 select board members agreed on, but I don't know. It seemed like there were some places, some lines along the way that should be lower. Just my opinion watching the process.
Okay. So, for one, I must say, I'm not comfortable with that number. Maybe we should, I'm just throwing out an idea. Let's sit on this. Let's see if the numbers were accurate and come back on Wednesday.
Can I ask, make a request?
Yeah.
Herb, of the numbers that are fair, that we don't have a lot of control over, if any at all, salaries, FICA, Medicare, Medicaid, whatever, insurances and stuff like that. If you had a convenient way to highlight those so that as I look at the rest of it, I know what has some malleability.
Anything that's blue is contract related.
Okay. So up at the top, it should be a lot of blue.
Herb, what do you do with, sorry.
Is that you, John?
Yep.
Yeah, I didn't want to stop you what you were doing for Rob, but I wondered what you did with line 487.
$487 is zero.
I don't think we meant for that to be zero, right? I think Rob just didn't have a number for that.
Yep.
That's that area where I made a mistake. So it's even worse.
So suggest that one, maybe we use my averaging on that one.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Same with some of these other line items. It's only like equipment was zeroed out, but so I mean, well, to be like we had asked Herb to go through a massive spreadsheet in 2 minutes.
Yeah.
So
Right.
like we should have to, add that in. But I mean, it's illuminating that we continue to hover around 11.5 to 12%.
Or discouraging.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's instructive. I'm not saying it's like, where are we, like, so Claudette, like the undesignated fund, like, do we all have, like, I think John has offered some numbers for that. You and I have offered some numbers. I wonder if others, where we, like, maybe we should apply that now and see where we're at.
So at 12%, it was about $70,000. Is that right?
The 70,000 would put us probably closer to 13%.
1%, if you, for every 1%, so the current budget is the 4.493. So basically, intuitively, for every 1%, that's about $45,000. So to reduce, to get what I'm getting at is kind of like where you're at 11.52. Where are you comfortable? What's your single digit that you want to be at, which gives you a number to shoot for in absolute terms, that you've got to reduce the 5 million down to something between 5 million and 4.49 million.
I mean, at this point, I feel like we can't send anything more than 9% to the voters, right? I mean, like single digit is 9.
And I'm pushing closer to 5%.
I don't think we're going to get there.
So
At least in this sweep through.
Right. If you're at 9%, you got to basically take 3 off or 2.5 off. So you're 45, 90, and half of that, 130,000.
But that gets us more into like the 10% undesignated fund range, right? Or 11% or something. It gets us out of that, well, the recommended range, but maybe that's okay. I don't know.
What do people think about just, well, okay, if we sitting on this until Wednesday, I heard where Roger thought we should be. I heard what I thought we should be. What do other people?
Previously, I thought 7% would be taking into consideration that there's some cost of living adjustments that would push it to a real number of 5%-ish increase in real dollars. But 7 is where I was hoping that we could find a way to get there.
John or Mary first?
Just like to see what these totals are from what we've done tonight. But I would love to get into the single digits. I don't know if it's realistic to get down to 4 or 5.
John?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I'll certainly have some few things to propose differences for on Wednesday, but it's a few percentages points more than my column, like 0.5 percentage higher than Rogers. It's pretty dead on with Rob's.
That 7%, see this, 7% is a $4.8 million budget. So you got to lose 200,000 to get down to 4.8 to do a 7%. Just that's why I put that over there.
Can we double check to make sure that none of the equipment funds or anything crept back in, because I didn't, you were still using a number when I had agreed to 0.
I mean, I think so. Yeah, we should check. But I mean, aren't we at the point then where we have to think about infrastructure at this point and thinking about different ways of financing our bridges, really? I don't see any other financing like, I think that's the financing decision that's on the block now, where it's like, that's $175,000 to maintain our capital, to maintain the bridges. And, you know, we know that we have some committed projects in the works. And so it just seems like we'll be, you know, bonding for our bridges. And that Elm Street project, you know, with Tracy Hall also looming is, I don't know if we should be bonding all of that. So I just think, I mean, I think that's one of the decision points, right? Does anyone else have any like high level thoughts on other decision points at this moment for future financing? Or do you think we should just recess, Claudette?
Well, I think we need to really reconsider the 275 in paving. That's for reclamation of 1 mile of road.
Okay.
No, it's not.
Sorry.
No, it's not. We've covered this a few times now. It's just our regular paving budget. But there's a reasonable, though not certain chance that we'll get the grant this year. So we didn't get it last year, but we did the 2 years before. So I think Herb would say that he's not counting on it, but there's maybe a 30% chance that we'll get it this year.
Or there's a zero, you know, that's my concern with trying to thinking that we're going to get a grant. We already know that the state has cut back on funding for projects this year and next year that had already been approved. They pulled the funding. We don't know what will be available from the state, if anything.
If you fund this at 275, I can tell you, you will have a net balance in paving at the tail end of fiscal year ending, you know, June 30, 2022. So if you decided to bring this down a little bit, there is room to do that. It's just that much less that you would have to move forward with in a future year. So the idea is, because we've been bringing down the paving budget a little bit by not funding it back in that couple-year time frame at a higher level. This is the idea, is trying to get it back to so where we can have a balance again that we can work with. So if I don't think it's going to break the bank if you take 50 grand out of here or 25, but just again, during budget season next year, we're going to want to keep looking at the balance for the designated fund for our paving projects. That's all.
So is that a recommendation you might make at this point, Herb, is to like look at that?
I can live with that, just like you've lived with some decisions from that standpoint. So I do think that, I'm not saying there's a buffer in there, but the idea is, the whole idea for the trying to bring this back is to make sure that we still have a designated fund moving forward in the future that we can rely upon, that we're not, I'm trying to rebuild that little bit of that crater that was built by not funding it for a couple of years there back due to the July 1 storm.
So I'm going to again propose that we just sit on this and revisit it on Wednesday, make sure that the numbers are all correct.
Sounds good. Put up.
So what was the number we have to get cut down to and to get to 9, Herb?
Up to
1,000,008.
If I did 7%, you need to be at 4.8 million.
Oh, 9% would be more. No, you
We
should.
have to lose like $200,000.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Yeah. Okay, everyone. We're gonna move on to executive session, and someone willing to make a motion.
I don't have the motion sheet, so I won't make it.
I'll make a motion A motion to enter executive session under BSA section 313A3 to discuss a personnel issue and to invite the town manager to join said executive session.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, we'll roll call. John,
Yes.
Rob,
Yes.
Roger,
Yes.
Mary,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. Is this a one-part motion? I think.
Yes, you're good to go. And there will be no action as part of the executive session or related to it.
So Roger will put everybody in a waiting room.
Who's left?
Larry.
Rod and Linda.
Okay.
Is there a motion to, Roger, is everybody back in that's still hanging out? Is there a motion to go back into public session?
I move to enter public session.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
John, how do you vote?
Yes.
Rob,
Yes.
Mary,
Yes.
Roger,
Yes.
and I'm a yes. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Second.
And roll call. John,
Yes.
Rob,
Yes.
Mary,
Yes.
Roger,
Yes.
and I'm a yes.
Thanks for leading us through that, Claudette. I think
Yeah.
that was ended
Very
up being a
good.
pretty good process.
No, it was a terrible process, but I don't know how we can do it better. Truthfully.
I think it ended up being a pretty good one.
Yeah, do
Yes,
the
it
capital
did.
budget before you do the budget process. That's a key.
Okay, everybody, thank you.
Thank
Good
you.
evening.